This is Keep the Faith Ministry News. I'm Hal Mayer. The Middle East is quietly heading towards the largest natural disaster in human history, and there's nothing it can do about it. In 2015, a report by the Organization of Islamic Cooperation quietly warned of a bleak, water-scarce future for the Middle East. It highlighted climate change, erratic weather, and the utter lack of water sustainability in the Middle East, made all the more dangerous by high degrees of reliance on agriculture and low adaptive capacities. With only 2% of the Middle East covered by water and 94% vulnerable to climate change, its very future is at stake. 3 years later, the situation has only become more bleak as water increasingly becomes a coveted and politicized resource. Over the last 20 years, there have already been 6 conflicts in the Middle East, claiming the lives of millions. Water shortages don't only start a conflict, but also make them worse. The Pacific Institute, which maintains a global conflict database, reports on 92 conflicts that took place over water in the Middle East since the 1960s. What is already the norm may move past a breaking point with drastic climate change already underway. One study predicts a 25% decrease in rainfall throughout the Middle East by the end of the century. Countries already struggling with instability, chronic water shortages, droughts, and insecurity will be the hardest hit. The Human Development Report forecasted a 50% decline in water availability in Syria, not by the end of the century, but in 2025. After Jordan's statement that it would not renew Israel's lease on Jordanian agricultural farmland, Israeli Agriculture Minister Uri Ariel was quick to respond with the threat of cutting Jordan's water supply for days. For Israel, this is nothing new. Former Prime Minister Ariel Sharon noted that the 6-day war began after the diversion of the Jordan River, recognizing the crippling effect of the drought. In a city with millions, food scarcity is likely to lead to crime and violence, but in the arid, sweltering Middle East, it could conceivably lead to outright war. Jordan is an outlier that is quickly becoming the norm, vulnerable to anything that happens upstream of the Jordan River. It relies mainly on underground aquifers, drawing 200% more water than is sustainable. Essentially, they are drying up their supply. And with the influx of refugees, urban population growth, and reserves running dry, Jordan is confronted with a near certain prospect of drought. Gulf countries already struggling with water scarcity have opted for costlier solutions, such as desalination, which separates sea salt from water. 70% of the world's desalination centers can be found in the Middle East. Saudi Arabia alone spends over $24 billion to increase its desalination capacity. But even desalination has its limitations. This energy-intensive approach isn't without its dangers and environmental impacts. Desalination produces chemical byproducts, high carbon dioxide emissions, which accelerate water scarcity. Warring for water is nothing new. Somalia is a tragic example of this. In 2004, Somalia was witness to the infamous War of the Well, lasting 2 years and killing 250 people. By the time it ended, Rabadore, the site of the conflict, was home to water warlords, water warriors, and water widows. Droughts kill more people than any other natural disaster. A Brookings Institute report found that in more than over 100 years, more than half of all natural disaster-related deaths were because of drought. During the Somali Civil War, the fighting quickly devolved into control over strategic water sources and hoarding of humanitarian supplies, leading to over 300,000 deaths. South Sudan suffered a similar tragedy, quickly impacting agriculture, giving rise to famine and severe nutritional deficiency. No longer exceptions and increasingly the norm, water insecurity and exhaustion are only expected to get worse. The International Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, forecasts that temperatures across the Middle East are set to rise by 1 to 2 degrees Celsius by 2030, and an additional 3 degrees Celsius by 2065. The world is already past the point of no return. Even the agreed-upon goals of the 2015 UN Climate Summit will not make a difference. The majority of the world's countries are still on the energy and emission-intensive path of development, with no sign of slowing down. On the other hand, just 3 top emitters produce more carbon dioxide than 100 other countries. The Max Planck Institute has warned of areas of the Middle East becoming uninhabitable for human life. They conclude that summer temperatures in the Middle East will increase at twice the normal global average. The temperate, mild regions of the Mediterranean are expected to reach 46 degrees Celsius by 2050. By 2100, extreme heat waves will occur 10 times more often than before, while extreme weather, like firestorms, dust clouds, and rapid evaporation, will become the norm. Even if the world somehow pulled together and tried to prevent climate change-related temperature rises, we're already too late to prevent its effects. In this new Middle East, nighttime temperatures will not fall below 30 degrees Celsius, and normal day temperatures will reach 50 degrees Celsius. Air conditioning is a short-term solution, as it will only increase energy consumption and carbon dioxide emissions. Over 3 billion people will call the Middle East and Africa home by 2050. Water might replace oil as a strategic resource. Amidst such upheaval, today's exodus of refugees and persistent global conflict could become a pale shadow of the terrible human displacement to come. Whether you believe climate change is real or contrived, water shortages are substantial. War is likely. And there shall be wars and rumors of wars. Matthew 24, verse 6. This is Keep the Faith Ministry News. Thank you for watching.